Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into one of history's most, let's say, controversial philosophies. And we're going to see how its ideas are being totally flipped on their head for the modern workplace.
So let's just kick things off with a question that, might make you see your office in a whole new light. Think about it. That one colleague, the one who always seems to have an angle, the one who's playing the game just a little bit harder than everyone else.
Right. When we hear that word Machiavellian, that's the picture that pops into our heads, isn't it? That person who's playing three-dimensional chess while the rest of us are, well, just playing checkers. They're always looking out for number one. It's basically a shorthand for toxic. But what if there's more to the story?
Okay, to really get this, we've got to rewind, like way back, 500 years to be exact, to the source itself, Niccolò Machiavelli's super controversial book, The Prince. And look, he wasn't trying to write a how-to guide for being a terrible person. He was actually putting together a really practical playbook for how to gain and keep power.
This quote, wow, it just lays out this, brutally practical worldview. Machiavelli was basically saying, look, love is unpredictable. It depends on how other people feel. But fear is all about consequences, and that's something a leader can actually control. It's a pretty stark take on human nature, but you can't deny it's powerful. And this really gets to the heart of his whole argument. He saw love as this, unreliable currency when it comes to power. Why? Because people will always put themselves first. But fear? Fear is a constant. And let's be clear, he's not saying go be a tyrant. It's about making sure there are clear, predictable consequences for people's actions.
And this is maybe the most important part. Machiavelli drew a really, really bright line in the sand. A leader, he said, has to avoid being hated. Why? Because hate leads to rebellion every single time. And what's the quickest way to get there? Mess with people's property or their family. See, fear keeps people in line. Hate makes them want to take you down.
Okay, so let's fast forward back to today. How on earth does this 500-year-old advice apply to, our modern offices? Places where we're all about teamwork and collaboration. Or at least, that's what we say, right?
For decades, the corporate playbook on this has been super simple. You find those Machiavellian types, the schemers, the ones who are maybe a little too ambitious, and you show them the door. The thinking was always that their self-interest was just a poison pill for the rest of the team.
But what if that whole playbook is just wrong? What if we've been getting it wrong all this time? Because some pretty recent research has basically thrown a giant wrench into that entire way of thinking.
Yeah, check this out. There was this really fascinating study back in 2015 in the Journal of Management, and it asked a pretty wild question. It said, what if we've been looking at these people all wrong? What if that intense ambition isn't a bug in their system, but a feature we can actually use?
And here it is, the big reveal from the study. It turns out these so-called Machiavellian people aren't just selfish, they're incredibly adaptive. Their number one goal is, to achieve their goals. So if the best way to do that is to be a great team player, to cooperate, to help everyone else succeed, then that is exactly what they'll do. Think of their ambition like a powerful engine. A leader just has to point it in the right direction.
And that right there is the huge mental shift. The problem isn't the person's personality. The real opportunity lies with the leader. It's about creating an environment, a system where that person's personal ambition lines up perfectly with the company's goals.
So the big question is, how do you actually do that? How does a leader take that intense, self-interested drive and turn it into something that benefits the whole team, the whole organization?
Well, the research points to this clear three-step playbook. It's called transformational leadership. First, you have to give them a compelling vision. Show them how their success is tied directly to the company's success. Second, give them autonomy. These are people who thrive on having control, so let them run with it. Let them own their work. And finally, connect what they're doing to a bigger purpose. Make the work itself feel rewarding.
And when you do those three things, something pretty incredible starts to happen. All of that drive, that strategic mind, that laser focus on getting things done, it all gets channeled into the company's goals. And they don't just become good employees. They can become your most proactive contributors, the ones pushing everything forward, because now they see the company's win as their win.
So at the end of the day, the big takeaway is this. Stop trying to change who people are. It's a waste of time. Instead, start changing the environment you're leading them in. This isn't about fixing a so-called problem employee. It's about being a smart enough leader to design a system where their ambition becomes one of your greatest assets. And all of this leaves us with one last kind of provocative thought to chew on.
If selfishness and ambition aren't automatically bad, if they're just really powerful tools, then who's responsible for how they get used? The responsibility falls squarely on the leaders, to build a culture where those tools are used to build things up, not tear them down. And when you think about it that way, well, that changes everything.